So autistic people have usually they'll have a comorbid condition of sensory processing disorder, which is basically if you think about autism and how it's basically down to a communication issue where communication comes in many forms, and you'll have like communication from your senses. So that means light coming in, it could be smells coming in to your peripherals, and then you then kind of digest that data input, and then you translate that into a signal. Could be like, oh, it's too hot in here, I need to turn the heating down, or whatever. So autistic people either be hypo or hypersensitive to certain exterior stimuli, which will be sensory based stimuli. Now, what can happen is you could be in a, I don't know, like a typical grocery store, and we've got a deli counter. So the deli counter has a certain smell coming off it. Then there'll be somebody walking around with a cleaning machine cleaning the floor, and there's like the smell of the cleaning liquid. So you have like two inputs going on. Then the noise of the cleaning machine is another input. Then there's people and crowd noises going on. Then there's the bright lights from the actual store going on. And then you have to try and think, I'm in here to buy like, whatever Doritos or whatever you're going in there for. And you're trying to like navigate around it. And it's just like, whoa. So all of this input, it's kind of like filling up a cup and it overflows. So that it's an outburst of kind of just like emotional data that you can't process or you can't communicate to your body. Whereas a neurotypical person could just communicate saying, oh, that's a bit noisy, that's a bit smelly or whatever, I want to move away. Autistic individuals can't process that data like that. I guess it's down to the individual as well, right? So, and then there's one of the tactics I it's called the avoid triggers, and it's exactly what it is. Just avoid triggers. Like if you're triggered every time you go to the grocery store, and it never changes because there's certain smell, the lighting or whatever, then just find a new store. You know what I mean? And like that to me is like a no brainer. But individuals have individual needs. So you could have somebody who like is cool with smell but doesn't like sound, so they could just like chuck on some like noise cancelling headphones like these and then just like go about their day all cool because they can control that environment. Some people are unlucky and they don't they have a hard time dealing with multiples, so it could be multiple sensory stimuli, and I guess it just at the end of the day it does come down to the individual. Like what does the individual have issues with, and that's why we have therapy and stuff like that for individuals, or help based for an individual, because you can't really blanket it because people are different, right? I think there is a global misunderstanding of sensory issues because people think like it's really funny because you would think that people will be ignorant to the fact and think like, oh, well, people don't understand autism and that's the issue. In fact, it's not that. The issue is that they overthink it and think that everyone's going to have all these sensory issues all the time. And so the ignorance comes from the fact that they think that you're not going to be able to deal with anything, when in fact they could just say to you, hey, Joe Blogs, like what do you have issues with? And then they'd be like, oh, just smell or just sound or just light or whatever. And then you'd have an easier transitional period. But the problem is people just go like, oh, they're going to be awkward. Like this is the big issue with employers. Employers won't hire autistic people all the time, thinking that all these reasonable adjustments are going to be put in place and they'll have to rip out all the lighting and redo like the whole office. You know what I mean? Like all that kind of jargon. But like it is funny because you'd think that the misconception would come from the fact that people just don't accommodate autistic needs, and in actual fact that they're scared to. I think that's another thing. Well, there is a campaign with the National Autistic Society, which I've been a part of now for a few years, which is not brilliant, but it's the only thing we have right now, which is the Autism Hour. So like they say we'll take a department store or a grocery store where they'll dim the lights to make the lights softer and less harsh. Then they will turn off all the music, so there's no music blaring anywhere. And then they ask shoppers for that hour to be more courteous, to lower their tone a little bit. Maybe don't make as much noise if they can. Avoid shopping with their children at that point. If they can, so that's not noisy and chaotic. And then I'm sure they turn the beeps off on the tills as well. I'm pretty sure they turn the beeps off on the tills. And those kind of things are great because like they allow for individuals with those specific needs in those areas to access the store. I think other things that you can improve on is like make sure that all stores are air conditioned, because then it would reduce the amount of smells from like the fish counter or the smells from the deli or the fresh bread counter and stuff like that. And I know some of these times sometimes these things are selling points. So you can walk in and smell of fresh bread. I don't think anyone walks in and smells kippers and things like, you know what I mean? Nobody does. It's gross. But like, I think bread and stuff is definitely a big one, but also that could be a triggering factor for somebody. But if you're doing an autism hour, then just like make sure that those smells are not pumped out, because usually it's just like an air freshener they use anyway. They're just spraying out like bread flavored air freshener, like Thornton's chocolate do it, with like Thornton's chocolate spray, and I'm sure what's the other one? There's a big chain, Subway. They have like a pizza flavored like air freshener that they just spread out, and like nothing tastes like Subway smells, right? Because it's not a thing. And so you could just reduce those tactics for autistic people and make it way more accessible. I think those things would go a long way. But the main thing is that don't just do it for an hour. Why can't it just be a standard in stores? Or even like why can't it be that hour every day? 9 till 8 every day. Oh, sorry, 9 till 8, 8 till 9 every day, or 10, like 9 till 10 every day. Like have some accommodation that has a longevity rather than just be like, oh, one day in October. You know what I mean? For 1 hour, you're allowed to shop. It's like, well, who the hell can do that? I think you're going to be met with restrictions from some stores. I think on the whole, the stores will want to do uh, those improvements. But I think you're going to have a hard time trying to implement them across the board to make it like a standard that'll happen every time. Only because there's you've got a lot to contend with. It will get there eventually, but you need more legislation in place. And I think some stores will probably just ignore it. You know what I mean? But because like stores have those signs, don't they? You see it all the times, like no smoking with a 500-mile radius of the store, or whatever. Like I thought it was like 100 feet or something, right? There's people literally stood under the doorway smoking, like blowing cigarette smoke into the store. It's like, well, that obviously just nobody follows those rules. So you'd have to make sure that it's implemented and followed through, not like to do with the smoking ban because it's a lot of bull crap. Yeah, I've used the one in Tesco once, and it is so much better because it's kind of like that feeling when you get into a warm, cozy bath, or you get into like fresh sheets in your bed, and you're like, ugh. It's kind of like that because like the lights are dim, the music's off. It's like, oh my god, you're not fighting for headspace. You're not fighting for sensory space. You know what I mean? And like that's crazy impactful. Like you have no idea how good that is until you experience it. So I think like every store should adopt this, but we've got a long list of legislation to go through before that happens.